Welcome to Right versus Left News, your daily briefing on the stories that matter, told from both sides of the aisle. I'm your AI host, Chris, and each day I bring you the most important political and cultural news with perspectives from conservative and progressive voices. No spin, no agenda, just the facts and the opinions that shape our national conversation. Let's dive in. It's Sunday, May 31st, 2026. We've got 5 fast-moving stories. Colombia's pivotal presidential vote, allies in Asia urging unity while passing Washington's tone, a court shift on Texas's SB4, California's governor's race hitting its final primary sprint, and President Trump signaling he may headline America's 250th celebration after artists back out. Let's get to it. Before we jump into today's stories, a quick word from our sponsors.
This episode is brought to you by Family GPT, the AI chat platform actually designed for kids. If your children are curious about ChatGPT, but you're worried about what they might see, Family GPT gives you full parental controls, content filtering, and the ability to align responses with your family's values. Whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, secular, and many more. Monitor every conversation, set usage limits, and let your kids explore AI safely. No ads, no data selling, complete privacy. Sign up free at familygpt.chat.
Thanks to our sponsors for supporting Right versus Left News. Now let's get to the headlines. Story 1, here's what happened. Colombians are at the polls today for the first round of their presidential election. Many see it as a referendum on outgoing President Gustavo Petro's agenda, with sharp contrasts on security, talks with armed groups, and relations with Washington. Voting is underway nationwide under heightened security after recent campaign violence and even drone disruptions at political events. Overseas voting has been extended through today. Expect results tonight, likely pointing to a June 21st runoff. Reporting from the Associated Press, The Washington Post, and El País. On the right, commentators say the vote could mark a shift away from so-called total peace talks toward tougher security and a more market-friendly course, one they argue could reset ties between the US and Colombia and increase pressure on cartels and armed groups. On the left, analysts warn that rolling back peace efforts could reignite conflict. They stress the risks of heavy-handed crackdowns amid rising attacks and a fragile human rights climate, framing the vote as a test of Petro's reforms and the country's polarized social agenda. Story 2. Here's what happened. At Singapore's Shangri-La Dialogue, US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth urged Indo-Pacific allies to boost defense spending and said Washington seeks partners, not protectorates. His tone on China was notably softer, and he avoided naming Taiwan, while several allied ministers cautioned that mixed signals can weaken deterrence across regions. Coverage spans defense outlets, public radio, and major wire services. On the right and in national security circles, the speech is cast as a push for burden sharing, a steady posture meant to deter Beijing while keeping partners invested in a durable balance of power. On the left, and in some mainstream reporting, the focus is on what wasn't said. Leaving Taiwan unnamed and softening language raises questions about whether Washington is downplaying tensions or distracted by other crises. Story 3. Here's what happened. A federal appeals court has allowed key portions of Texas's SB4 to take effect while lawsuits continue. The law lets state authorities take action against people suspected of crossing the border illegally. It's been blocked and unblocked in a fast-moving legal fight. Now, as of May 29th, enforcement can proceed for now, even as civil rights groups press their challenges. On the right, officials call it a necessary step because Washington failed to secure the border, celebrating the Fifth Circuit's move as a win for state authority. On the left, civil liberties groups argue SB4 is unconstitutional, preempted by federal law, and invites racial profiling and family separations. They say the appeals court leaned on procedure and sidestepped the law's core defects, and warn of a patchwork of state-run immigration regimes if it stands. We'll be right back with more of today's news after this brief message.
This episode is brought to you by Family GPT, the AI chat platform actually designed for kids. If your children are curious about ChatGPT, but you're worried about what they might see, Family GPT gives you full parental controls, content filtering, and the ability to align responses with your family's values. Whether Christian, Muslim, Jewish, secular, and many more. Monitor every conversation, set usage limits, and let your kids explore AI safely. No ads, no data selling, complete privacy. Sign up free at familygpt.chat.
Thanks again to our sponsors. Now back to the news. Story 4, here's what happened. California's governor's race is hitting a key moment with the top two primary on Tuesday, June 6th. The field is unusually crowded, polls are volatile, and both parties worry about being shut out under the so-called jungle primary rules that send the top two finishers to November, regardless of party. Reporting from state election officials, the Associated Press, and the Washington Post. On the right, coverage amplifies Republican optimism, profiling contenders like Steve Hilton, highlighting his Trump endorsement, and arguing that a splintered Democratic field could open a path. The race is framed as a verdict on costs, crime, and outmigration. On the left, analysts stress the policy stakes, climate, housing, and immigration, and warn that tactical missteps could hand Republicans an advantage in a blue state. Democratic leaders are trying to avoid a top two surprise while navigating ideological rifts. Story 5. Here's what happened. After several artists pulled out of semi-quincentennial festivities on the National Mall, President Trump said he may headline the America 250 celebration himself, or retool the program. He's floated replacing a concert with a large rally, and he's expected to headline next month's opening of the Great American State Fair. Reporting comes from major national outlets. On the right, the move is framed as turning a talent-booking headache into an opportunity, energizing supporters and reclaiming the 250th narrative after artists balked. On the left, it's portrayed as politicizing what could be a unifying commemoration and as another example of artistic backlash to the administration. Some outlets mock the pivot as self-promotion. Quick recap. Colombia votes today, with a likely June 24th runoff. Allies in Asia call for unity while parsing a softer U.S. tone. A divided court fight lets parts of Texas's SB4 move forward for now. California's top two governor primary is Tuesday, and America 250 planning may pivot to a Trump-led centerpiece. We'll keep an eye on all of it over the next 48 hours. That's it for today's episode of Right versus Left News. Remember, understanding both sides isn't about picking a team, it's about being informed. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and join us tomorrow for another balanced look at the day's biggest stories. Until next time, stay curious and stay informed.